Let's look at this exercise. Sketch the graph of the following functions and state the coordinates of the minimum or maximum point, the equation of the axis of symmetry, and the roots of these functions. All right, let's see. The first one, you can see here that if you take y equals x squared, let's say this is y equals x squared, this graph x plus 1 squared, this should represent shifting the graph horizontally 1 unit to the left. So it should be lined up with -1 and -3, which is 3 units down. So -3. So the axis of symmetry, or the minimum point, it should have a minimum point because this here is positive. Minimum point is located at -1, -3. All right. In fact, let me draw it a little larger so you can clearly see what's going on. So you have our x and y axis here. So the thing is, y equals x squared would be somewhere about here. Y equals x squared should look somewhat like this. And then this graph, y equals x squared, is shifted 1 unit to the left, -1, 3 units down, this is -3, so somewhere about here, lined up on the -1 and beside -3. So this graph should look something like this. All right. Oh no, let me redraw this part. All right. And the axis of symmetry would be x equals -1. You can see it from here. If you shift x squared 1 unit to the left, then in x squared the axis of symmetry was x equals 0. Here now it is x equals -1. All right. The minimum or maximum point, this has a minimum point and it's located at -1, -3. So just by looking at this, you can see if you shift it 1 unit to the left, it's located at -1, 3 units down, it's at -3. All right. The equation of the axis of symmetry is x equals 1. So what we have is a minimum point so far. The location of it, we have the equation of the axis of symmetry, and the roots would be where the curve cut the x-axis. We could also look at the y-intercept. At the y-intercept, x is 0 because x is 0 would be here. So if you make x 0, right here would be located at, and this would be what now? 0 plus 1 squared. It's just 1 squared minus 3, which is -2. It would be at -2 here. All right. If you solve this now and make y equals 0, what you're going to do is say x plus 1 minus 3. X plus 1 squared minus 3 equals 0. All right. And then what you say here is you add 3 to both sides. So you have x plus 1 squared equals 3. If x plus 1 squared equals 3, this would imply that x plus 1 is the square root of 3, positive or negative square root of 3, which implies further that x is negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 3. Alright? Negative 1 plus the square root of 3, negative 1 minus the square root of 3. So the roots would be negative 1 minus square root of 3, should be right here, and the other one would be negative 1 plus the square root of 3, would be right there. Now let's sketch the graph, or let's plot the graph using GeoGebra and see what would happen. X plus 1 squared minus 3. So this was x squared. Let's make it x plus 1 close bracket squared minus 3. Okay, there we have it. Let's zoom in a bit. So we have what we said. It was the minimum point was at negative 1, negative 3. Yes, it lines up with negative 1, negative 3. Alright. The axis of symmetry would be x equals negative 1, which would be this line here, x equals negative 1. The location of the minimum point is negative 1, negative 3. You see that there? It cuts the y-axis at negative 2, right, as we saw before. And remember, this is x plus 1 r squared minus 3. So it's a shifting of x squared, 1 unit to the left, 3 units down. As for the roots, we say this was, what was it again? Negative 1 minus square root of 3, and then negative 1 plus square root of 3. So negative 1 minus square root of 3. Negative 1 minus square root of 3 would be 1 root, which is here. And negative 1 plus the square root of 3 would be the other root, which is there. Alright? Let's just work these out and see what the numbers would be. Let me put it in a simpler mode, basic mode. So negative 1 minus the square root of 3 with negative 2.73. So you expect one root on the left to be negative 2.73, and the root on the right would be what now? Negative 1 plus square root of 3. So it is negative 1 plus the square root of 3 is 0.73. Alright. So the other root would be 0.73. Let's zoom in a bit to see whether these would actually seem to be the root. If these are really the root, negative 2.73. Let's zoom in some more. Negative. Alright, you have negative 2.6 here, negative 2.7, and a little more. Okay, good. So that seemed to work well. Let's go over to the right. This should be 0.73. Let's zoom in. So we have 0.7 and 0.73 it should be. Okay, a little more than 0.72 and something. Good. So we do have that graph there, just the way we said it would have been. All right. Let's look at the other graph. Let's erase all of these things and look at the other graph. accidentally erase part of this. Go again, making sure I don't erase the things that I want to remain there. Let's look at this. Negative x minus 2 squared plus 6. Negative x minus 2 squared plus 6. Let's write that over here. What we have is negative x minus 2 squared plus 6. Let's see what that graph would look like. Let's zoom out a bit. Okay. Now, let's get rid of this graph. Let's sketch this graph on our graph paper that we have here. Negative x squared x minus 2 squared. The negative means there will be a maximum point, so it should have this shape. As for this, x minus 2, what this indicates is that you have negative x squared. If this was negative x squared, alright, graph of negative x squared, let me rewrite that. This is a graph of negative x squared. The minus 2 means negative x squared is shifted 2 units to the right, so you should have a shifting 2 unit here and 6 units up. I'm going to have to zoom out somewhat to see the 6 and pull this down. Alright, so let's redraw this part. We have x squared, negative x squared here. Right, so this is 2 units to the right, shifted 2 units to the right and 6 units up. So let's see now, 6 units up, so the maximum point should be here. So therefore the graph should look something like this. Now where would it cut the y-axis? If we have y equal negative x minus 2 squared plus 6, when the graph cuts the y-axis or intersect the y-axis, x is 0. So what we have is y equals negative 0 minus 2 squared plus 6. But what we have is negative 0 minus 2 squared. So negative 2 squared is positive 4. So this negative remain at 4 plus 6. Negative 4 plus 6 is what? Negative 4 plus 6 is 2. So it should cut the graph at 2 then. Alright, let's make it like this. What about the roots of the equation? Not ready to have the graph go down here as yet. What about the roots of the equation? If you have the roots occurs where the graph intersect the x-axis, and that means y equals 0. So negative x minus 2 squared plus 6 equals 0. Negative x minus 2 squared equals negative 6. Right? Now if we multiply both sides by a negative 1, we get x minus 2 squared equals 6. Square root both sides, you have the square root of x minus 2 squared is just x minus 2 equals the square root of 6, but it's plus or minus the square root of 6. So here now, x is equal to 2 plus or minus square root of 6. When you add 2 to both sides, it's 2 plus or minus the square root of 6. Let's see what happens there. if you have two plus the square root of 6, you get 4 point, call it 45, and then 2 minus the square root of 6 is negative 4.45. So what you should have then, 4.45 and negative 4.4 and negative 0.45. Let's write it over here, 4.45 and negative 0.45. So these are the roots. All right. Let's erase these writings and writings here. All of these writings. Let's not erase everything. Let's erase this part and this part. Good. Now we want to see what the graph would be. Let's plot the graph. It is negative, open bracket, x minus 2, close bracket, squared, plus 6. Aha! Let's make the graph thicker so we can see it clearly. I want to see the graph more clearly. So the thickness of the line is that. Let's make the color blue. Some shade of blue. Okay, good. So we have it. We have the graph here. So the maximum point is at 2, 6. The roots are at negative 0.45. Yeah, it seems like it. And 4.45. Nice. Right. The third graph, x minus 3 squared plus 1. X minus 3 squared plus 1. Alright, I expect that it would have a minimum point located at 3, 1. Alright, minimum point located at 3, 1. Let's just plot that. X minus 3 all squared plus 1. Let's erase what we have here. So x minus 3 all squared plus 1. Let's just modify this to make it the new graph. Open bracket, x minus 3, close bracket, raised to the power of 2 plus 1. Okay, good. That 3, 1. Was it that what you said? Yes. Located at 3, 1. It has a minimum point. It has no roots. Right? It has no roots. By the way, where is it going to cut? The y-axis. You can't see it from here, but let's determine that. Where is it going to cut the y-axis? When x is 0, that's where it cuts the y-axis. So 0 minus 3 all squared plus 1 is negative 3 squared plus 1, which is 9 plus 1, which is 10. So it should cut the y-axis at 10. Let's see if that really is the case. Alright, we see that it cuts or intersects the y-axis at 10. It has no roots because it did not intersect the x-axis. Alright, so if you should try to solve this equation, you would not get an answer. It would be indeterminate, and we can try it out. Let's try it. If we say x minus 3 squared plus 1 equals 0 at the x-axis, we have x minus 3 all squared equal negative 1. Then if we square root both sides, we see that we would be trying to find the square root of -1, and that wouldn't work out, right? That wouldn't work out. And if we try another way, what we could do is say x minus 3 r squared is the same as x minus 3 plus 1. Let's expand it out and then try to use the quadratic formula. We have x squared minus 3x plus 9 plus 1. Now, what we would end up with here is x squared minus 6x plus 1. Not plus 1, plus 10. 9 plus 1 is 10. The formula says x is equal to the square root of x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Let's try that. We have to identify a, b, and c first. In this case, what is a? A is 1 because it's like 1x squared, so a is 1. Negative 6 here. This is negative 6. So it's b is negative 6, c is 10. So x equals minus negative 6 is positive 6 plus or minus square root of b squared, which is negative 6 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 10, all over 2 times a, which is 1. So we have x equal 6 plus or minus the square root of 6, negative 6 squared is 36, minus 4 by 1 by 10 is 40 over 2. Alright, let's fix up what we have here now. 36 minus 40 is negative 4. Alright, so let's simplify what we have under the square root sign is negative 4. But the thing is, you're not able to find the square root of negative 4. So again, you see that the equation has no roots. Alright, so that will be it for now. I will see you in the next video.